All right, now let me bring in Dan Froomkin. He's a senior Washington correspondent at Huffington Post. Dan, you've written about this. It doesn't seem to be much of a coincidence. First, let's start on Jack Lew. How progressive or non-progressive is he?
I think he's more progressive than you give him credit for, and I think that Obama had some good reasons to hire him that you may have overlooked. I mean, he has a reputation as a terrific manager, which coming after Rahm Emanuel, who, I wouldn't want to have worked for, who was a drama queen, and Bill Daley, who was checked out, will be a nice surprise, I think, for the White House staff. He's done a pretty good job at OMB. He is personally a liberal. That's what everybody tells me. He at the same time is able to talk. Well, he's able to talk to Republicans, but also the Democrats on the Hill seem really genuinely happy that he's there. So there are positives. But your central point is dead on. Why are we having another bankster running the White House? And what that comes back to is that these are the people who Obama chose to surround himself with. As early as the transition, he sort of chucked all his really progressive economic advisors. And I think partly because he saw how disastrous, a legacy Bush had left him, he surrounded himself with risk-averse former Clinton people, name-brand Clinton people, who in the interregnum between Clinton and Obama had fed themselves at the trough of Wall Street. And as a result, these guys have two big problems. One is they're deferential to Wall Street. They can't help but be. And the other is they can't admit that as Clinton officials they did anything wrong, which is why, for instance, Lew will deny that regulation had anything to do with the crisis. Because
he's the one that helped cause the crisis by doing the deregulation. And look, you say he's a good manager. To that I say whoop-de-doo. I mean, if you're chief of staff to the president of the United States, that should be the bare minimum. It doesn't really say whether you're progressive or not. And then the GOP in Congress is ecstatic with this pick, which is a disastrous sign. And the sellout Democrats in Congress are generally happy with him. I'm not heartened by that either. Let me ask you a broader question, though. And actually, this is a person by the name of Tooth asked us in a live chat that we have on current.com, and I think it's exactly the right question. He says, I think Obama surrounded himself with too many right-wing insiders. I have no idea why. He asked Cenk, why did he do this? But Dan, you're on, so let me ask you. So why did he pick all these money guys who are so, at the very minimum, so pro-banker and not progressive on that enormously important issue?
Yeah, I think it was a risk aversion. I think he was really sort of terrified by the crisis that he was facing. And then once he brought all these people on, he seems to be unable to get over it. I mean, he had a chance. Think about it. Almost his whole economic team, with the exception of Tim Geithner, checked out a little more than a year ago. So Larry Summers was gone, and Rahm was gone, and Orszag was gone. And instead, we got Daley and a bunch of other folks who, arguably, we saw the worst of the Obama economic policies during that period. And so now, yet again, he's got a change in staff, and he hires yet another, got Clintonite. Jack Lew was OMB director under Clinton for 3 years, and another bank person. And I think the question is, not only why does he surround himself with these people, but isn't it at some point taking that kind of money from Wall Street disqualifying for public service? I mean, at some point, isn't it appropriate to say, look, you sold out. You can't do this anymore. We don't trust you.
It's interesting because, I would take the other side of that, Dan, and say, look, you can redeem yourself. So Gary Gensler worked at Goldman Sachs, right, and took a lot of money from Goldman Sachs. But he's been doing a pretty good job inside this administration fighting for the little guy.
So give me an act of redemption then, right?
Right, exactly. So if these guys said, hey, look, I made millions from Citigroup, and imagine if Jack Lew came out and said, oh, I'm so sorry, I was part of the people that caused the bailout because I was such an incompetent, by the way, good manager. How'd you lose $20 billion at Citibank? Okay.
Well, the other thing is Jack Lew, as far as the banksters go, Jack Lew was one of the least guilty. I mean, he only got $2 million, which is chump change by some standards. And he was apparently involved in the management side rather than the investment side. But you know what? I want to know. I think you're exactly right. I want him to come up and say, this is what I did. This is what I should have done. The word Citigroup didn't even come up in his confirmation hearing for OMB director.
No, but that's what I'm talking about. Last question for you there, Dan. I mean, it looks like, as I look at this, it looks like a fixed game, right? Because somebody should be complaining about this. I mean, he's on the economic team. He was before as budget director, in a sense, right? Budget is nothing more important. The Republicans complain about it all the time. And now he's the chief of staff. Nobody on the Republican side complains about this guy. Why don't they complain? Because both sides want to protect the banks.
Well, let's see what happens, right? I mean, I think you're exactly right. We need to watch this guy and see what he does. There's a possibility that his hiring is in fact part of Obama's sort of reminding himself of what he campaigned on, and maybe he'll do something. Maybe he'll endorse a financial transactions tax, or he'll come out against Wall Street, or he'll start talking a lot more about the 99% and the 1%. But in the meantime, he has a White House full of 1%ers.
Yeah, that is definitely among the problems. So Dan Froomkin from Huffington Post, their senior Washington correspondent, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Great to be here, Jane.
And great articles on all of this as well. You should check that out on Huffington Post. All right, when we